The modern world, an arena in which men and women cast their lives upon the altar of ambition, power, and self-deception. Among the myriad forms of modern entertainment, few offer as rich a tapestry of human aspiration and decadence as the television series Suits. Set within the high-stakes world of a prestigious law firm, Suits serves as a fascinating reflection of our contemporary struggle with the Übermensch, morality, and the eternal conflict between appearance and reality. It is a series that begs for a deeper analysis, one that recognizes the deeper undercurrents of my Nietzschean philosophy hidden beneath its polished surface. Allow me to start with the main protagonist, Harvey Specter. What is a man but the embodiment of his will to power? Harvey Specter, the firm's top closer, is the ultimate representation of my concept of the will to power, though it is a will directed outward into the world of domination and influence. To be a lawyer, to climb to the top of a prestigious firm, and to carve his name into the marble halls of success, Harvey must transcend the common man, the plebeian who is shackled by societal norms, by moral constraints. Harvey does not bow to the constructs of ethics. Instead, he bends them to suit his own ends. A Nietzschean hero, perhaps, but a flawed one. Why does Harvey so often push against the boundaries of legality and ethical propriety? Is it a sign of his greatness, or a reflection of his own insecurity? A deep inner need to prove his superiority to others? As I once said, he who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster. And yet, Harvey's very transgressions serve as evidence of his refusal to be enslaved by conventional morality. An act of strength, perhaps, but one that comes with perilous consequences. Then we have Mike Ross, a brilliant young man who has cheated his way into a prestigious law firm. Is Mike not the very epitome of the Übermensch in disguise? He is not bound by the rules of the society that would otherwise deny him his rightful place in the sun. The question arises, is Mike's lack of a formal education a symbol of his transcendence of the old, traditional systems of knowledge? Perhaps he represents the overcoming of the past, a refusal to accept the limitations of traditional academic structures. And yet, Mike's greatest flaw is his constant need to hide his true self, to live in the shadow of a lie. Is this not the essence of the last man? The man who seeks comfort and security above all else, who sacrifices authenticity in favor of avoiding discomfort? Mike's deception is a cowardly compromise, one that stifles the very greatness he might otherwise achieve. By living in the shadows, he denies himself the full expression of his potential. How often do we too wear masks to avoid confrontation with our true selves? Let us turn now to Jessica Pearson, the managing partner of the firm. She's a woman who has carved her path with relentless determination and a willingness to manipulate power structures in her favor. Jessica stands as an archetype of the will to power in its most sublime and subtle form. In a world dominated by men, Jessica's rise to the top is not merely a triumph of intellect. It is the assertion of her strength, a quiet yet fierce defiance against the oppressive structures that would keep her in her place. In a world dominated by men, Jessica's rise to the top is not merely a triumph of intellect. It is the assertion of her strength, a quiet yet fierce defiance against the oppressive structures that would keep her in her place. She fully inhabits her role, without apology, without restraint. Yet there is an interesting tension within her character. While she may master the external world, there remains an internal struggle. She must navigate the complex dynamics of being a woman in a male-dominated society. Is her authority ever truly hers? Or is it only granted by the male structures she seeks to dismantle and redefine? In this, she exemplifies my idea of eternal struggle, the constant push against external limitations, an inner battle between the will to power and the demands of a world that seeks to limit her. Suits presents a moral landscape that is perhaps more revealing than it initially appears. Beneath the glossy surface of success, wealth, and ambition lies a world of corruption, deception, and moral compromise. Characters such as Louis Litt embody this tension with tragic clarity. Louis is a man who seeks validation, yet his attempts to gain respect often result in self-destructive behavior. His need for approval from others blinds him to his own potential, trapping him in a cycle of resentment and self-loathing. I warn of the danger of looking outside oneself for validation in my book Twilight of the Idols. The most common form of human stupidity is forgetting what is truly valuable: self-reliance. In Lewis, we see the dangers of what I call the slave morality, a morality that values humility, meekness, and self-sacrifice at the cost of one's own individual power. Lewis seeks to please others, to conform to the expectations of his peers, even as he tries to assert his own authority. His need for validation from Harvey and the others represents the internal dissonance of the modern man caught between external pressures and internal desires. But can Lewis ever overcome this need for validation? Or will he always be enslaved by the values imposed upon him? At its core, Suits is not merely a show about law, power, or morality. It is a show about the tension between appearance and reality. The very premise of the show rests on the idea that Mike Ross, a man with no law degree, can fake his way into a prestigious position. This is a world built on facades, where success and identity are often constructed, not earned. This is the world of decadence, a world where appearances are valued more than substance, and where true greatness is often obscured by the comforts of mediocrity. This brings us to a crucial Nietzschean question. What does it mean to live authentically in a world where so much of our existence is built on falsehoods and illusions? The characters in Suits are constantly navigating this moral labyrinth, each one attempting to reconcile their true self with the demands of the world around them. At times, they succeed. At other times, they fail miserably, falling victim to the very deceptions they once manipulated so masterfully. How often do we too wear masks in the hope of fitting in, of gaining acceptance in a world that prizes conformity over authenticity? One of the central tragedies of Suits is Mike Ross's eventual downfall. In a world where deception is commonplace, Mike's lies eventually catch up to him. His entire existence in the firm is predicated on a falsehood, a foundation that, when shattered, brings the entire edifice of his life crashing down. Is this not the inherent danger of living a lie? I once wrote, "He who lies to himself and listens to his own lie comes to a point where he cannot distinguish the truth within him or around him." In Mike's case, his deception is not just an external act. It becomes internalized, corrupting his very sense of self. He is a man who lives in the tension between his two selves. The real man, who has no formal qualifications, and the illusion he has created. The successful lawyer who belongs in the firm. How can a man who lives in such contradiction ever achieve true freedom? The answer, of course, would be that he cannot. To live authentically, to embrace the will to power, one must be willing to confront the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. And so, as we peer into the lives of Harvey, Mike, Jessica, and the rest of the characters in Suits, we must ask ourselves, what is the true nature of power? Is it merely the ability to manipulate others, to win battles in the courtroom and in life? Or is it something deeper, something more profound? To wield power authentically is to embrace one's own greatness, to rise above the petty constraints of morality, and to create one's own values. But in doing so, are we not also at risk of becoming tyrants, enslaved by the very will to power we seek to assert? This is the eternal dilemma faced by the characters of Suits, and indeed, by all of us. Can we ever escape the shackles of societal expectations? Can we live in truth, or must we forever dance with lies? In the end, perhaps it is not the external victories that matter, but the inner triumphs, the courage to face ourselves, to embrace our own will, and to navigate the treacherous waters of life without losing sight of our true nature. What then is the price of greatness? Perhaps it is one we must all be willing to pay.